What is going on, Colts fans? Welcome back to another episode of Colts Brawl. I am your host, Cody Felger. Joining us, Colts Brawl writer, Mr. Anthony Gulick. Anthony, thanks for joining us, man. How are you?
Pretty good, man. I'm just excited to be back on the show again.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can actually have something to talk about now with the Colts starting training camp. They reported on the 28th. And now I think today was the first day. Some of the Colts players met with the media. Castonzo, Darius Leonard met with the media. Training camp's getting up and rolling now. It's super exciting. I guess before we do that, before we kind of dive into, the main point of what we're going to talk about today is kind of looking at some of these position battles in training camp that we're looking forward to looking at. But the first thing I kind of want to talk about, obviously, was reported a couple days ago. T.Y. Hilton was so he's partially injured. He actually injured his hamstring slightly on his own, it was said. So he was placed on the list, but he can be taken off the list at any time because of this injury. It appears very minor. But certainly, especially considering how injury-riddled his season was a year ago, it's not a great sign starting off immediately to have T.Y. Hilton already on the injury report. Anthony, I'm curious your thoughts on kind of this, what happened here with him.
Instantly, my first thoughts were, you're right. Like it's not a great sign because of all the injuries he had last year, and at least it's like a little like minor injury because with hamstrings is like something that could linger throughout the course of the season. But with him, it's only a minor injury, so that's not too bad. But I think by the start of the season, he should be good to go. Actually, like by the end of training camp, I think he'll be good to go. With especially like with last year, like he was like really hurt throughout the course of the year. So I'm really hoping that he stays healthy throughout the rest of the year. And hopefully this hamstring it's not something too minor. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because with hamstrings, it could either get worse or it could linger throughout the whole season. So I'm just hoping that this isn't anything serious because he's still the focal point of our offense.
Right, for sure. And the Colts have talked about they want T.Y. Hilton to still be a focal point from where their offense goes and how it runs this year. But the good thing is, with a hamstring injury, T.Y. Hilton still has a lot of time to recover. So it's better to be safe than sorry at this point, where you're not playing the preseason at all. You have, 5-6 weeks before the regular season. Just let him rest up as much as he needs to. He's gone before without practice, and he's gone out there and performed. So for me, it's kind of like if T.Y. Hilton feels like he's 100%, let him go out there. But if he feels like he's not, there's no reason to panic and to rush. I mean, he's been through countless training camps. He's probably one of the least players that needs training camp out of any of these guys because he's just been in the league for so long. He gets how it goes. So that's a little bit of notable news among some cuts from some really guys that weren't going to make the roster that the Colts made a few days ago on August 2nd. So another thing that happened today, Darius Leonard met with the media. And so did Anthony Castonzo. One interesting thing that I took from that Anthony Castonzo press conference was Castonzo said that he had a hard look at opting out this year. And now the Colts have nobody Chris Ballard has said to the media, nobody has said they wanted to opt out this year, which is great news for the Colts. But Castonzo seems like if there was one player, it'd probably be him. And it kind of makes sense, especially because a couple years ago he had that injury that he missed a few weeks, and it makes sense. He's an older veteran on the team as well. What would your thoughts be because a guy like Castonzo, he's a key part of that offensive line. That would be a huge loss if Castonzo was indeed to set out the year this year, because not only is a major loss for the Colts, but the backup situation is not necessarily favorable for the Colts with the Raven Clark as a backup left tackle slated right now. Anthony, give me your thoughts on if that decision was going to be made and how big of a decision it is now that Castonzo is deciding to play this year.
Yeah, I think it would have been a big decision, if he would have opted out of the season. Honestly, yeah, you're right. Like the backup situation is not the greatest, like for example, if Lewinsky or Nelson, say opted out, we'd be like better suited with the backups there with the guard situation. But tackle is like a position that we're probably gonna go after next draft. Because Castonzo's he's probably gonna retire after this next contract. So if he would have opted out this year, this obviously would have been a huge loss for this line. And plus, he works so well with the guys on the line. I did see a tweet this morning from his media press conference that he said no disrespect to any other players he played with, but this has to be like the best offensive line he's ever played with, and it's as good as it gets. So it definitely would have been a huge loss, and we would have had to make some free agency moves or some trades or something to grab a left tackle, because our backup situation on offensive line depth for the tackle position is not that great.
Yeah. And that's something I've even talked about. Should the Colts look at potentially upgrading that backup tackle position? Obviously, they felt like they didn't need to this year, but that Castonzo situation, if that would have escalated to the point where he decides to set out, I mean, you can't roll in the season with Raven Clark as your starting left tackle. I mean, that can't be a reality. That's arguably the most important position on that offensive line. Protecting your quarterback's blind side. So I definitely think the Colts would have to scramble a little bit if Castonzo indeed did opt out this year. But very fortunate that we don't have to have that conversation. We don't have to go down that road. So we'll be happy that Castonzo is going to be with the Colts at least for 2 more years. Darius Leonard also met with the media today. I just love how, I don't want to say lofty, but I love how Darius Leonard shoots for the stars. When people ask about what his goals are, he was asked today. He said, first off, Super Bowl champion, second off, league MVP. So Darius Leonard shooting for the stars again. I know he said he wants somewhere like 200 tackles as well at one point. You got to love, though, from your best player on the defense, just a guy who is not afraid to basically want to do the impossible almost, it seems like. But you got to just love that passion and fire from Darius Leonard. I mean, he's already historically been one of the better. He's been a Hall of Famer statistically through his first couple of years, but he's not satisfied with that. He wants to continue to get better. He wants to be the best at his position he ever wants to be. And I'm curious, Anthony, from your perspective, how do you think that rubs off on some of these other guys in the locker room, the other linebackers, the other defensive players, the other offensive players? How do you think what do you think it speaks to the team that your leader is very critical of himself and wants to get better?
Yeah, I think it's a great motivation for the rest of the defense to get better. Last year, the Colts defense was like middle of the pack, but with the new guys coming in like Buckner and everything, like I know Buckner, he's posted up on his Instagram. He said like that he wants to have a top 10 defense this year, and like for example, like with Leonard, I've seen him on Good Morning Football and like on social media too. Like they like showed off his new cleats, and I guess like he said like he looks at everything that people say about him on Twitter. So like and on like all over like social media and everything. So he put like the 85 Madden overall rating, which was complete garbage. He put like the worst pick in the draft that Bleacher Report called him. And then he put like other stuff like these guys calling him like the 4th best linebacker. He's never satisfied with what he's doing. He's always trying to get better. And I think that really like just lights a spark within these guys in the locker room, because some of these guys like Justin Houston, like he's at the like towards the end of his career, he's starting to get up there in age, but these young guys are just like motivating, like the younger guys and some of the veterans like Houston and Buckner, and I think honestly, like Leonard, he's just getting better every year, and I'm really excited for what he has to have next year.
For sure. Yeah, I love just the motivation, the chip on the shoulder that Darius Leonard can find. I've never seen a Colts player that can find that kind of motivation from really anywhere. I mean, I feel like he's constantly being disrespected at this turn, at that turn. And Darius Leonard just takes all that and he just uses it. He's not the type of guy that – so you think of like Eric Ebron, for example, a guy that couldn't take criticism. He didn't use that as motivation. He just used that to throw a fit on social media, and he didn't really back it up, I guess. Darius Leonard does back it up, but yeah, Darius Leonard certainly uses that as motivation. And I think it does rub off on all those guys. I feel like a lot of guys probably feel like especially playing for a team like the Colts, a smaller market team, you're always being disrespected. And I know the Colts a couple years ago were really playing up that underdog role a lot. And I kind of love that because it gives you that motivation that like it's us against the world. And, you just know, like, no matter what people say, we're not going to take that and we're not going to listen. Like, we know what we're capable of. And I think that Darius Leonard just leading the charge on that has really helped this defense kind of have a chip on his shoulder. And, if they get a top 10 defense, I really think that that's very achievable this year. And I think a lot of people are coming in hungry, which is really great. I think that's a big reason why nobody's opting out, because people are so hungry because they want to come back and they want to play. They want to prove that they can be one of the best defenses in the league. And I really think that all of them, everybody from 1 to 53 on this roster has a chip on their shoulder. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in 2020 with this defense and just with this team in general. All right. We can move on now, kind of looking at some of these position groups. So I've talked about some of these before. I've seen different articles about them. So there's a lot of different ones. But we'll just touch on a few of them and kind of get your thoughts on some of them. Some of them will go a little bit quicker. Some of them will probably be a little bit more of a discussion. We'll start with one of them that's pretty obvious, the running back position. I mean, the Colts obviously had Marlon Mack, who ran for over 1,000 yards last year, was a top 15 running back arguably last year. He kind of broke out a little bit. And then they drafted Jonathan Taylor this year in the second round. He ran for over 2,000 yards, back-to-back seasons, almost 3 seasons in a row at Wisconsin, had over 20 rushing touchdowns. Phenomenal player in his own right. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens because I would say Taylor's probably more physically gifted, but Marlon Mack's a pretty crafty, good runner as well. Give me your thoughts here, Anthony, on this running back position and what you're going to be looking for here in training camp.
In training camp, I'm going to expect a battle between these two guys. Throughout the course of the season, Marlon Mack is he's been a top 15 running back in my opinion these past 2 years, but he hasn't stayed the healthiest. He's been sitting out a few games, and that's why the Colts went out and drafted Taylor. Taylor, honestly, I think that he could eventually be the starter if he has a breakout year, like say mid-year. With this whole COVID-19 situation, it's so important to have depth on the roster. So, like, for example, if Marlon, if he comes down with like the COVID-19 and he's quarantined for say 2 weeks or whatever, you can just insert Taylor and Jordan Wilkins into this offense and just be fine. With Jonathan Taylor, with his speed and his frame and everything, like he can turn those 5-yard runs into 50-yard runs, especially behind our offensive line. Like his potential is just endless. So I'm really excited for this running back group this year. And I think that honestly, like I don't think we'll be rushing for fewer than 100 yards every game. Like when me and Mike and Justin were on Frank Reich's Zoom meeting last week, he said an ideal game is to like throw for 250 yards and run for 100 yards, at least 100 yards every game. And I think that's totally achievable with these running backs. So I just have some big hopes for these running backs.
Yeah, my co-host on my other podcast was actually on there as well, Derek. And I remember I watched through that Frank Reich press conference, and Reich made a good point. He said, we had some games where he ran for over 200 yards. Like, that's really great. But we also had some games where we got stifled a little bit in the running game. Like, we couldn't get it going for the life of us. I automatically go back to that Tampa Bay game where the Colts could not run the football at all. I mean, Marlon Mack's average rush in that game was not good. Ultimately, the Colts found their offense through the passing game that week. But, I guess for me, I always felt like the Colts had a good running game, but they didn't have an elite running game. And I felt like they needed to still upgrade at that point. Obviously, the Colts felt the same way. They weren't happy with number 7th overall. They want to be top 5. So I think that's going to be the major difference. Obviously, we know you can run the football against middle of the pack to bad run defenses, but what happens when you play against, some of the best? That's when I think Jonathan Taylor really comes in and can help you get those necessary yards that you need in those situations. And so, I think it's going to be an interesting battle. I mean, ultimately, I feel like Marlon Mack's going to, first off, be the starter week 1, just because we know with COVID, they don't, it's going to be, no preseason, so Jonathan Taylor's going to see less game action before it actually counts. And also, he has a fumbling problem. So I think Marlon Mack, he doesn't put the ball on the ground on the turf at all. So I think Marlon Mack's probably going to be your starter week 1. But I think just because he's a starter doesn't mean that Jonathan Taylor's not going to see the field a bunch. I think he's still going to be a key part to what the Colts want to do in that rushing offense. And I think it's going to serve both these guys well, honestly, because you talked about it. Mack has had some durability issues, and Taylor's had a lot of running with Wisconsin. He had a lot of carries in his career with the Badgers. So I think it's going to help out both these guys and keeping them fresher, keeping them more durable as the season progresses on. But that'll certainly be an interesting battle to watch to see, okay, who is week 1 the starting running back? And then as the year goes on, does that change at any point? I mean, that'll be interesting to see. We can move on now to another position. We'll just stay with the offense. The wide receiver position is one that I'm really intrigued to watch because we know who are going to be the top 4 receivers. I think, obviously we think T.Y. Hilton's going to be the number 1, but 2 through 4, it's kind of up in the air for me. I mean, I could be convinced any 3 of these guys could be the number 2 receiver alongside Hilton. I'm curious for you, Anthony. How do you think this position is going to shake out? And what are you looking for in training camp from these 3 wide receivers?
Personally, with me, I think with the other 3, it's going to be a battle for that number 2 spot. I'm really loving Michael Pittman. I'm really liking his size and his ability. I've seen him working out with Phillips, so I've been really excited about Michael Pittman. But Zach Pascal had a really great year last year, and for example, in that Pittsburgh game, he was making some tough catches, some over the shoulder, toe tap out of bounds catches. He was making some really good plays. And there was a lot of games, even when T.Y. was playing, he would have more receiving yards than T.Y. So, I'm mainly it's going to be between those 2 for me. Of course, there's other guys, like Reese Fountain that's going to be coming in, trying to make the final roster, and some other guys we drafted like Desmond Patman, guys like that. The wide receiver group is a lot more underrated than people give them credit for. I honestly think this could be a top 15 wide receiving core in the NFL, because I think Michael Pittman, I think he's really gonna stand out and be the number 2 guy. But if he goes down, or if he because of the situation, if he comes down with the COVID-19, Zach Pascal can just come in there and just give you, say, 80, 100 yards per game if anything happens. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that's gonna happen every single week, but T.Y. is obviously going to be the main guy. A healthy T.Y. can go over 100 yards every game. But, if T.Y.'s having an off game, Zach Pascal can step up. In that Houston game last year, Zach Pascal made some great plays, too. There were just a lot of games where I feel like Zach Pascal played great. And I think it's just going to be between Pascal and Pittman for that number 2 spot.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to be interesting to see where Paris Campbell plays into this, because he's such a fast receiver and such an elusive receiver, but he just – first off, the biggest knock on him coming out of Ohio State was just a lack of route running. So I feel like Paris Campbell's going to be more of a, dump it off, let him go make a play. But I think Paris Campbell should be still in that conversation, just because we didn't fully see what Paris Campbell could bring because he was injured last year. But I think definitely number 2 probably is between those 2 for between Pittman and Pascal, because they're kind of both bigger body wide receivers. Obviously, Pittman's a little bit bigger. Pascal's still 6'1", almost 200 pounds. So Pascal's a pretty big wide receiver as well. So that'll be an interesting battle to watch. And you also mentioned the number 5 and number 6 position. That'll be interesting for me to watch as well, because you got Reese Fountain, you got Desmond Patman, you got Marcus Johnson you brought back. He had some pretty good games last year. He's been in the system. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see. First off, how many receivers do the Colts keep? And then secondly, out of those receivers, which ones, ultimately make the final 53. So that'll be interesting to watch. Okay, let's keep looking here. Let's keep going. I want to look at the defense, because I feel like there's a few more position battles that are of interest on the defense compared to the offense. First off, I'll start on the defensive line. That other defensive end position alongside Justin Houston. So Jabal Sheard obviously was the starter last year. The Colts ultimately decide to not bring him back. So there's going to be a battle for that other defensive end position this year. And there's a lot of candidates for this position, honestly. It's kind of crazy how many guys you could see out there as a starter in week one. I mean, obviously you have Ben Banigou, who you drafted last year. I would like to see him probably win this position just because I would like to see him take that next step and be a full-time starter because he has the talent. I would like to see him do that. But you also got guys like Al-Qadim Muhammad, even some guys who played more interior but have played some exterior, some defensive end at times, and Danico Autry and Tyquan Lewis. I think it's going to come down to those four guys for me, who I think are going to battle it out for that for that starter position at the defensive end. But I don't know. I don't know who is my early favorite. I have a guy who I'd like to see win, but I don't know who I actually realistically see being that starter week one. What are your thoughts on this defensive end position?
My thoughts basically are basically like yours. I really want to see Ben Banniger win this spot. You know, he showed a lot of potential last year. And you know, like if he was a full-time starter, I think that he could, you know, do a lot of damage at that defensive end spot. I was watching that press conference with Coach Matt Eberflus, and he was talking about, you know, moving Autry around and moving Tyquan Lewis around from that spot. So, you know, like I think that he's gonna, you know, like mix and match like a lot of stuff there. But honestly, I think it's gonna be Ben Banigou. Like he did show a lot of potential. Like it didn't, you know, like he didn't have the perfect rookie year. He didn't, you know, put it all together. But I could definitely see like the athleticism and his playmaking is definitely there. Like for example, in the first game of the year, he sacked Rivers, and I just was like, man, like he is a good player, man. Like I just really think that, like he has the potential to make more plays if he sees the field more. Like guys like Al-Qadim Muhammad, I think that he's a very good backup, you know. And same with Ty Lewis. I think Ty Lewis is in the same boat as Banigou, you know. Like they both show the potential, but they just have to put it all together. And I think it's gonna be Ben Banigou.
Mm-hmm. I know some people would also throw Kaboko Toure in there as well. I'm kind of more inclined to say he would be more of a third down specialist, and he'd also probably play. He also plays a similar position to Justin Houston, so he might be the backup / third down specialist. He'll slide over and whatever that would look like. But that's kind of where I'm at with Toure, and also he's still coming off that injury, so you got to factor that in as well. But that'll be an interesting position because there's, I think 4 realistic guys that are going to take it, but there's also Kamoko Toure who knows? Maybe he got better in the run stopping department, and that could kind of put him over the edge. It'd be interesting to see what happens there. All right, let's move to linebacker. So this was a position battle last year that kind of emerged in training camp, and it's another one that could potentially emerge again. Who's going to win that starting Mike linebacker position, and then who's going to be the Sam linebacker? I think the uniqueness with this position battle, is that whoever is the winner and the loser, it doesn't mean that one of them is not going to see the field. I mean, I think both of them are going to be on the field. Just where at is going to be the question mark. Is it going to be Bobby Okereke? Is it going to be Anthony Walker? Walker won it last year. I feel like Bobby Okereke probably has more talent, natural gifting at the Mike linebacker position. But Walker still is a very good player in his own right, very underrated. Darius Leonard today was praising Anthony Walker for all that he brings, the stuff that he recognizes that helps Darius Leonard be Darius Leonard. I'm curious for you, Anthony. What do you think is going to happen with this Mike linebacker position? And who do you think is going to be the starter at the Mike? Who's going to be the starter at the Sam?
Yeah, so I basically think that Anthony Walker's he's going to be the starter. Like the Colts are very high on Bobby Okereke, but yeah, just like you said, Walker, he does a lot to like help out Darius Leonard. I basically do them as like a Batman and Robin type thing, like a 1-2 punch at linebacker. I'm a very big fan of Anthony Walker, and I do think that we should re-sign him this offseason too. He's a very good player, but if Bobby Okereke, if he, I think there's gonna be a battle between him and Okereke in training camp, and Like Bobby Okereke showed a lot of flashes last year, so he could very well take this spot. I do think it will be Walker, but like Bobby Okereke, he has a very great chance of winning this battle. Although I think he won't, he has a very great chance. He showed a lot of potential last year as well, and he had a great rookie year. He was my favorite defensive rookie out of all the
Mhm.
defensive rookies, and
Yeah.
I just think that Bobby Okereke has a great chance, even though that still think that Anthony Walker is going to be the starter.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That's kind of where I'm at as well. I mean, why would you like I feel like Okereke right now, it makes the most sense for him to continue to play Sam. I mean, the Colts basically figured out ways to get Bobby Okereke on the field last year by basically recreating their Sam linebacker position from what it was in 2018. So I think that's kind of how it's going to play again. I mean, Walker's in the last year of his contract, so maybe the Colts elect to not re-sign him and just play Okereke at that Mike linebacker position. I would like them to re-sign Walker because I just want I think all three of these guys are very good linebackers. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, even though I feel like Okereke probably physically is more gifted and more talented. It just doesn't make sense to me to get rid of a leader like that, Anthony Walker, when you can play all three of them instead of just letting Walker, leave and just having Okereke there. And I feel like at certain points, Okereke maybe will play the Mike linebacker, maybe on more passing situations, because I feel like he's a better pass defender than Anthony Walker. So it'll be interesting to see kind of the packages the Colts use and who their linebackers are. But I think strictly in the base defense, Anthony Walker is probably going to be your starter there at the Mike linebacker. All right, let's keep moving here. Let's look at another position of interest, the corner position. Now, this is a very interesting one to me because you got Xavier Rhodes, who you brought in this year, a veteran in the league, a veteran in this secondary. He had a rough year last year, one of his worst years of his career. He said he's been injured the last couple of years. He struggled through that, but the Colts feel like he has a chip on his shoulder and he can contribute to this team and get back to that form or close to that form this next year. Obviously, you got Rocky Asen, who you drafted last year, who really was coming on at the end of the year. I thought he was playing fantastic football for the Colts at the corner position. But I think the biggest microscope will be on Rhodes and how he, whether he is a good corner in this league next year, or whether or not he kind of flames out and it opens the door maybe for a guy like Marvell Tell to step in and be that other corner alongside Rock. Give me your thoughts on this starting Colts corner position, because I think this one's not being talked about enough, but I think it's one of interest to watch, especially if Xavier Rhodes continues to struggle like he has the last couple of years.
Yeah, personally, if Rhodes struggles, they're definitely gonna insert a guy like Marvell Tell in there. But I think, in my opinion, that he's gonna have a bounce back year only because it was a down year for him, but he still did make the Pro Bowl, and he didn't expect to get cut by the Vikings. So I think that just like Darius Leonard, like he is motivated, like he's just been like super motivated, like because I follow Rose on Instagram, I see like a bunch of stuff he posts. He is super motivated to get back to that level with this new team, and it's fitting that we play the Vikings week 2. And I think that, Rhodes is going to have a ton of motivation to get better and to get back to where he was. I'm not saying he's going to get back to his all pro form, but, he could get back to being like a good corner in this league. And same with Rocket Sin. I think he's going to get better too. Like he got better throughout the course of the season, like you said. Like in that Denver game, he played really bad, but then throughout the rest of the year, like he did show flashes of like a lot of good play. You know what I mean? He did play a lot of great football after getting schooled by Cortland Sutton and big receivers like that. So honestly, I think that if Rhodes struggles, they're gonna insert a guy like Marvell Tell in there. I'm a big fan of Marvell Tell. He's a decent player right now, and he's only gonna get better too. And honestly, I think Rhodes is gonna have a good year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are high on Xavier Rhodes. It'll just be interesting to see if he does have a good year. Do the Colts still find ways, similar to Okereke, to get Marvell Tell on the field? because he's still young at the corner position. I mean, he played free safety at USC, so it's not like he has a lot of experience at corner. I thought all things considered, he played very well, given the situation. Physically, he's very gifted. I'm really high on Marvell Tell. I think he has a lot of potential to be a good corner in this league, and he's not the typical. When you think of the corners the Colts have had, they've never really had this big of a corner, and he really fits the mold of what Chris Ballard's looking for in size and length for the corner position. So it'll be an interesting battle to watch here in training camp to see what happens with Xavier Rhodes. Hopefully he gets back to where he was or somewhere close to that or even halfway. He's still a decent corner in this league. So that'll be something I'll be interested in watching. Another position of interest on special teams. We know, obviously, the punter. We probably know the kick returners and the punt returner at this point. It's pretty well known who those guys are. It's pretty agreed upon. This one's a little more divisive, I think. Starting kicker job. Obviously, you got Chase McLaughlin, who the Colts claimed off of waivers late last year after Adam Vinatieri was struggling. McLaughlin overall, he converted 5 of his 6 field goal attempts, and the one he missed was a 50-plus yarder that he had the length. I think he just missed it to the right. He made all his extra point attempts. He was a rookie last year, so he did all that being on different teams and also in just being in different environments. McLaughlin was really good. The Colts felt like he did a good job. They brought him back on a 1-year extension. And, I think he's probably the favorite right now, but the Colts also brought in an undrafted free agent out of Georgia, Rodrigo Blankenship. A lot of people are high on him. Last year at Georgia, he was 27 to 33 on field goal attempts. That's about 82%. He was 3 for 5 on 50-plus yarders. Last year, he was 40. He's never missed a field goal in his time with Georgia, which I think is significant. He was the nation's highest. He got the award for the nation's highest for the best place kicker in college football last year. So it'll be an interesting battle between these two guys. I'm curious for you, Anthony. What are you looking for this winter, and kind of who's your early favorite? Who do you think is ultimately going to come out and win this job for the Colts here in 2020?
The McLaughlin, he was big time for the Colts last year, but my favorite is actually Rodrigo Blankenship. I don't watch like a ton of college football until like late in the season, So I remember just like watching, Rodrigo Blankenship, and he shows up in the biggest games, like in the college football playoff and then bowl games, because Georgia's always, a talented team in those playoff type atmospheres. He shows up, and I was really impressed with what I've seen from Blankenship during the postseason in college football. And Chase, he played very good last year for us, because obviously it was a big issue for us because we were just like, honestly, we could have won more games if, we didn't miss as many kicks with Adam Vinatieri. But my early favorite is definitely Rodrigo Blankenship. I'm not trying to, fault Chase McLaughlin in any way. He was very good for us last year, but I'm just really high on Blankenship right now.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the argument that I've made against Blankenship is, first off, no preseason. So unless Chase McLaughlin is just completely terrible in training camp, I don't know what Hot Rod can realistically do, at this point to dethrone Chase McLaughlin, because McLaughlin was very good for the Colts last year as a kicker. He was very good, and as a kicker in general, he was very good last year. Now, I know Hot Rod is more flashy. I know he has the bigger leg, but Chase McLaughlin also does not. He also has a pretty good leg, and I think you kind of know a little bit what you have in Chase McLaughlin, whereas we like Hot Rod. We like what he brings potentially, but it's a different game kicking from the college level to the NFL level. Extra points are longer. You got 300-pound men coming and trying to take your head off. It's just a whole different thing. I mean, we've even seen before, and I don't want to throw him in here because he could be a great kicker, and I could be completely wrong on this, but we've seen some of those high-profile kickers kind of flame out before. And so that's why I'm just like, I would prefer to just go with the guy that you have. I feel like he's not a bad kicker. I feel like when we say the word safe, some people can think like, oh, you're settling for a kicker. I don't think that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is You know what you have in Chase McLaughlin. He's a good kicker. Why would you let him? You know what you have in him. He played really well for you. He has familiarity with your coaching staff. He has familiarity in this league. He's still young. I would roll with him. That's just my perspective. But I mean, people can obviously disagree with that. But that's kind of where I stand with the kicking situation.
Yeah, like plus two, with Blankenship, I think like if he doesn't make the team and Chase McLaughlin makes it and he takes that spot, like he definitely like won't be a free agent for long. You know what I mean? Like I think like another team would definitely like like sign him real quick. So, but that's just like my like final take on like the whole situation.
Yeah, and ultimately, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, well, the Colts obviously know what they're doing on special teams with finding talent. They got Rigoberto, and he's one of the best punters in the league. So I kind of trust their judgment on figuring out who the next kicker is. And I think neither of these guys are going to be a bad option for the Colts. It's just I'm just trying to determine for me what makes the most sense for the Colts this year. And for me, I think that makes the most sense in my mind. But maybe Hot Rod comes in and he just wows everybody and he takes that starting kicker position. I would not be shocked if that happened. I really wouldn't. But that's just kind of where I stand there. So those are the position groups that are of interest this year for me. There could be some other ones on the back end of the roster that'll be interesting to see. But I think those are the five big ones that I'm looking at this year. I'm curious, did you have any more, Anthony, that you're kind of watching this year that you're going to be interested in watching and seeing?
Definitely it's going to be the quarterback group. Yeah, it's definitely going to be the quarterback group for me, because I'm just going to take a quick take on this. Only because of the whole situation right now. Like, I want to see if we keep Brissett or trade him. Like a lot of people thought that we were going to trade him, but I think it's important to keep him. With this whole like uncertainty with the COVID-19, like you see Matt Stafford. He just got put on the COVID-19 list, and like basically if this would have happened during the season, like the Detroit Lions would be screwed. You know what I mean? Like if they were making a playoff push and like say like around like week 9-10 that he came down to, like they would be screwed. So like if something happened with Rivers, like I would like to keep Jacoby, just because of the uncertainty factor. With even with Luck last year, at least we had Jacoby. Like I just want to see what what unravels with the quarterback situation.
For sure. That will be of interest. And that's why I think at first I wasn't a big fan of keeping Jacoby, but after all this has happened with COVID, I see the value in it now. Because, Jacoby's not obviously a great quarterback, but I feel like he can go out there and he can manage games and he could be your starter if he needs to be for a couple games and keep you relevant. Even if the Colts are making a playoff push and say that happens, I think Jacoby Brissett's a quarterback that's good enough that can get you continuing to stay, in contention until Phillip Rivers comes back. So I agree with you there. I'm also interested in seeing that third quarterback position. I mean, I know a lot of us already have penciled in Jacob Eason, but I mean, there's a lot of people who love Chad Kelly as well. And Frank Reich and Nick and Chris Ballard have also said, there's a reason why Jacob Eason was a 4th round pick. Let's not go crown him the savior. He's going to have to earn it just like anybody else. He's going to have to compete with Chad Kelly for number 3 quarterback. So that'll be interesting for me to watch, to see does Jacob Eason really wow coaches in camp this year. I really want to see that. I'm hoping he does, and I'm hoping it's really not a competition, but that'll be something of interest for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right, well, that'll do it for this podcast. Thanks, Anthony, for coming on, talking Colts training camp. It's going to be interesting to hear. Unfortunately, we can't go down to training camp this year, but it'd be interesting to hear some of these position battles from the coaches, from some of the reporters down there. And we'll be sure to keep you guys updated on what that happens. Be sure to obviously find us at Colts Brawl on Twitter, on social media for all those updates. But for Anthony and myself, thanks guys so much. I hope you guys have a great week and stay safe out there.